me shabla solvade. Om Guru Vajradhara Sumati Munisha Sane Karma Utta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Hum. Om Guru Vajradhara Sumati Munisha Sane Karma Utta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Hum. Om Guru Vajradhara Nisha Sane Karma Utta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Hum. Om Guru Vajradhara Utta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Hum. Om Guru Vajradhara Sumati Munisha Utta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum. Dhagi Chetsun Lama Tuje Che Nyamda Dala Tuje Sikso So Gebe Shesan Dala Tendo So Oyon Sungi Nawa Tsedo So Tseji Ningne Solwa Debe Tse Dechen Korlo Visu Lekshune Yila Sambe Dede Malupa Gemel Hungi Drubra Chingil Soni Sodan Dikdun Shabe Tse Dungi Namke Yinsu Soni Yonsu Tsopa Dan Chera Nyetun Changra Chingilo Chancho Pargi Ninsen Tukun Tu Nyu Peme Siuru Lekshu Chancho Drube Gegen Kunshishi Tungen Dela Drubra Chingil Dagi Lona Chola Chokpa Dan Chomin Samjur Ngemba Shiwa Chodan Tumbe Dede Malupa Bemel Hungi Drubra Chingil Dorna Tingne Tsera Tamche Dan Techi Pardu Negav Tamche Rese Kyamne Lama Kele Me Tukche Chingi Dala Sikso Sol Gongyab Drewe Nyamda Dacha La Jetsun Lame Tuche Rabgongne Kudan Sungi Nawa Dralme Tu Nyam Sunyongwe Kesan Toprasho Kewa Kundu Yanda Lama Dan Rame Chiki Pela Long Yente Rabzone Dorje Change Kopa Nyurto Shoya Pakyuke Kudan Dagilu Pakyuke Sundan Dagina Pakyuke Tugdan Dagiyi Tenyerme Chikto Chingelo Makyuke Kudan Dagilu Makyuke Sundan Dagina Tenyerme Chikto Chingelo Om Shakyamuni Soha shipu ki chushi me to Tramare rabaling shin ni de gempadi sangye shintu mikte ulwarki drokun namda shingla Chupar shoyi dam guru ratna mindra la kamni ryata yami Sangye chudan tsogi chonam la chanchu pardu dani kyapsu chi Dagi chinso gibe sonam ki Drola pinchira sangye drupar sho Sangye chudan tsogi chonam la Chanchu pardu dani kyapsu chi Dagi chinso gibe sonam ki Drola pinchira sangye drupar sho Sangye chudan tsogi chonam la Chanchu pardo dani kyapsu chi Dagi jinso gibe son Drola pinchira sangye drupar sho Nel Buddha, nel Dharma
In the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, I take refuge until enlightenment. With the practice of generosity and the other perfections, may I attain the state of Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings.
Namo ya lai ke da luda ne jin ke runda da mi ke nam da ruwa kuin ge ranam chi tsampa tham che ke to da gi che ten tho Buongiorno.
Good morning.
Ogni tanto, osservando
Sometimes, when we observe our life, the way we live it, various situations,
per me mi sembra come se
it seems to me that we should ask ourselves what life is, and we should maybe be able to see it as a flow that sees beautiful moments, difficult ones, joyful, sad moments, pleasure, suffering, and so on.
noi abbiamo spesso
Often
di voler
we tend to label
come sto, io sono così.
situations. How do I feel? I feel like that. I am like that. But we can answer to this question at the present moment. How do I feel now? now I feel good, but 10 minutes ago I wasn't so well. So do I feel good or bad? And sometimes you try to get an average value of the situation, but we are not so good at it. So we take just one part of the experience, usually the last one, well, among the last ones, and we generalize based on the latter moment. But the truth is, we are in a flow with the ups and downs, with different various experiences. And I've never met anybody who was like a straight line. I met people who had a very subtle wave that was slightly going up and down, but they were overall very stable. So with subtle sadness, subtle happiness, but they didn't experience great suffering or great excitement. But still, it was a wave with the various emotions and feelings we have. But we aren't indifferent to the outer world. In other words, we do not live in an autonomous, independent way. We are not being separated from the rest. So whatever happens, whatever the other person says, if it's cold or hot, whatever we eat, and anything else that happens in the world outside, it does influence ourselves. Outer facts do not determine the way we are, but do influence ourselves. So it's like a metaphor of solving an equation. Let's imagine how we feel at the present moment is the result of that equation. There are many factors determining how we feel. There are many numbers referring to the body, to the emotions, to our memories. Some are our projections, expectations. Some numbers correspond to the bacteria that live in our body. Some others are related to the outer world. So there's an infinite number of numbers. So every single small number has an influence on the results of the equation. Is it clear? Once I was in India, I was about to leave to set off to Borobudur. I went to Gelapala, my master, and I said, please, could you please check whether it is a good astrological day to travel? And he said, no. And I said, why? He said, no. He wasn't an astrologer. He wasn't an astrologer, but he was able to check if it was a positive day according to astrology. But he refused to do it and said, did you buy the ticket already? Yes. And what if I said it's a bad day to travel? Are you available to change your ticket? No. And that's why I would not check. Because if we check and find out it's a negative day to travel, the influence this information will have on your mind, it will be greater than the actual influence of the planets and the astrological part. So the worry about whatever could happen is much greater than the actual risk. So our inner emotions, physical state play an important role. But it's not just about it. There are other influences around us. And important to us, at least to me, to myself, is to be able to have gradually more clarity about the influences we receive. When we have a feeling, a sensation, which is the result of that equation I was mentioning earlier, we ask ourselves why. Why do I feel like that? When we feel good and when we feel unwell. When we have a neutral feeling, then we don't ask ourselves why. But when we have an extremely positive feeling, maybe it happened to you that you feel a great joy. Why do I feel so much happiness? Or, on the opposite, we feel extremely sad inside and we ask ourselves, why? Why do I feel so unwell? When we try to understand why, we don't tend to take into consideration the equation with the different aspects. We rather seek something which looks coherent, that looks consistent, that seems consistent to us. So it is important at that point to find the scapegoat, the guilty one, both in the positive and the negative side. I feel good because of that specific thing. I feel unwell because of that specific thing. I found a reason, I know where to put my energy. But if we try to look at it with more clarity, these states don't happen for one reason, for this or that reason. As I said, one of the main aspects to me is to gradually, to be able to recognize the influences that are out there. This situation leads me to react in that way, brings me that kind of influence. So the more clarity we have on the different factors of that equation, the more awareness we have on where we need to put our efforts, what we need to improve. So I need to make sure that that certain kind of numbers which lead to a positive results need to continue. So we don't have to work on one or the other number. So the more awareness we have on our body, on our diet, our sleep patterns, our hormonal cycles, our emotional reactions in front of the daily facts that happen. Because of course we live the present based on past experiences. So the more awareness we have, this is a kind of experience we have, the more sometimes we feel a certain tension. When it's joy is okay, we don't worry about it, but sometimes when we feel tension, we feel somehow unwell, and we don't know what the cause of it is. So there are two factors. Sometimes we don't have clarity on the problem. For example, some years ago I was feeling very sad. That sadness was staying, coming back And one day I went to Lama and I said, Rinpoche, I feel sad. And he said, yeah? What is the problem? We will solve it straight away. He was always so kind. We will solve it straight away. So tell me, what's wrong? While he was asking, I found the answer by myself. And the answer was, I don't know. I said the truth is, whatever I imagine that I could change, even if there's a long list of things I wish were different, if I imagine myself with all these things different, that same feeling of sadness will stay anyway, won't go away. So I said, Rinpoche, let's do this. Let's wait a little bit longer so that sooner or later the real reason will come to surface so that I will be able to face them, or it will just fade off. And when Rinpoche said, what is the problem, we'll solve it straight away, and in that way he was able to show me that if we try to solve everything that was wrong, that was not enough, because I wasn't aware of the cause of that sad feeling. And here, I was able to welcome that feeling. I was sad, but there wasn't a specific reason I could attribute that feeling to, so that I wasn't able to look for the guilty one, for the scapegoat, so that when I felt that sadness, I was able to welcome it, but I didn't enter a specific inner dialogue where I was asking myself why and so on. So in my case, after some time, sadness was coming, then for a while it was gone, until one day I noticed the sadness was gone. That was after I studied in Tibet, so some months after, I noticed it was gone. And I noticed afterwards that this sadness was connected to this and that reason. But at that time, I wasn't able what was related to. So the danger here is to feel something, seek the guilty, which is not the real reason, and create conflicts, create an inner dialogue which is never ending. What is going on? What's happening to me? And so on. But afterwards, everything is fine, so then I feel guilty about that feeling, and so on. Is a never-ending inner dialogue. So when I have this feeling, it is real, but I don't have anything in particular to project it. So I welcome it. I try not to be able to label it, and then I let it go. This is one side of it, but the main aspect I wanted to tackle today is that often we feel emotions or feelings, which in my experience are rather tensions. But as we focus on ourselves, we always try to find a reason why we have that kind of feeling. When I understood this, I was feeling a kind of tension, and the first question was, why do I feel that? And I was looking around me to find the reason of that specific feeling. But then, more and more times, at the same time I was feeling that kind of tension, talking to different people, here in Italy, in Brazil, in Nepal, I noticed that in the same days, different people, different environments, people were reacting in the same way. They were having conflicts. They were experiencing similar situations in different environments, but at the same time, in the same days. So I asked myself, isn't it that there's some sort of influence in the air? And rather than saying there's this specific tension which I feel, but I do not react towards it, instead we usually ask ourselves what is wrong, and we tend to find something which is coherent, consistent in our eyes. For example, I feel tension because there's something around me that is not going well. And when we find something which is coherent, we then enter into conflict with it. We argue, we try to eliminate or stop it because we don't want to continue feeling this kind of tension. Then this tension is gone, but then the new tension we have created because of this conflict continues. Is it clear? So, to me, it is very important to be able to feel tensions without identifying with them, without projecting it towards someone or something, but be able to recognize that there is this kind of tension and understand how do I want to react to it, that I don't want to enter into it. It's like I'm in a certain environment. There is a person who's particularly angry. We do feel it. But at that moment, we need to ask ourselves, do I want to allow myself to react towards this kind of negative influence, or do I rather just want to recognize it but maintain my autonomy? You are angry, like a man who went to the Buddha, very angry, and said, "How dare you to say this and that? Who do you think you are?" He was very angry at the Buddha. And the Buddha said, "If anybody brings you a present and you don't want, whose gift is that?" And the man said, "This is the gift of the person who gave it to me." And the Buddha said, "You bring me your anger and I don't want it, so you just keep it for yourself." So it's not a mental attitude. There's also an energetic aspect that we need to be able to lead. Sometimes we are in front of a tense situation. Someone is angry, for example. We feel that tension. And it is possible to feel it without reacting based on that. Not to enter into that dynamic. What I feel is there, but it's not mine. I don't need to enter it. I don't need to react in the same way. I feel the tension. I don't feel good about it. And I ask, why do I not feel good about it? And I forget that there is a certain influence coming from a particularly angry person. And at that point, I just take that anger and I react based on that, just repeating it. In the Buddhist tradition, Tibetan Buddhist tradition, there is a concept which is, in my opinion, not always well understood. It's called the interferences. There are ceremonies, pujas, to take interferences away. At the beginning of each teaching, there is something done to take interferences away. What are the interferences? An interference is something that blocks or creates obstructions to do something or to get somewhere. I need to go from here to there. If along the way there is someone who's asking something else, or something happens which does not allow me to get where I wanted to get, that is an interference towards reaching that objective. And it can be positive, negative, or anything else. It's just an interference in my path to getting there. Interference in our experience is they are divided into three types: external ones, behaviors, situations of other people or other beings around us, the environment, heat, cold, environmental, social matters, which become something blocking, creating difficulties to do something else. This is an external interference. Then the internal ones, like our doubts, fear, jealousy, envy, inner aspects which do not allow to finalize something or to get to a destination. For example, we want to meditate. Someone keeps on poking us. You're home, you're trying to meditate, your son, your daughter jumps on you. That is an external interferences for the meditation. You're meditating, no outer interferences, but your mind starts with an inner chatter. That is an inner interferences, the worst one. Because when you don't have inner interferences, the outer ones are much less powerful. So distraction, anger, inner dialogue. For example, I want to feel good with you. External situations are perfect, but within myself I can't let my anger go. That is an inner interference to feel good, to have a good time with you. Then there are secret interferences, which are inner and external and outer ones. They appear as beautiful things, and they are actually positive, but they become an interference for what we want to do, which is maybe even more important. So I'm sitting, meditating on unconditional love, and I hear something related to a teaching. I do not meditate, and I pay attention to the teaching. Or I go to a teaching, I read a beautiful sentence, and I start paying attention to the reading, which is also beautiful, but I lose attention towards the teaching. Or I go to a teaching, and I chatter with a friend before entering the Gompa, but then it becomes an interference towards receiving the teaching. These are secret interferences which manifest as something positive, and they are not negative, but do not allow something greater to happen. A traditional example is of Puten Tanche Khyentse, a famous master before Lama Tsongkhapa. He had a knowledge level which was great. He was about in his life to win over ignorance, and he needed to meditate a lot. So someday someone brings a gift, as a gift, ink, paper and a pen, which was a very expensive gift. And he sees that as a sign of his beginning to writing. But because of his knowledge was so vast, he started to write, and he wrote over 100 books. He made a stupa. He was walking, doing the core around the stupa, and in every corner, in the 4 directions of the stupa, he had a secretary sitting. So doing the circle, he would stop in the 4 directions by the 4 secretaries dictating different texts. So at the same time, he was writing 4 different books, giving information to the 4 different secretaries. Another characteristic of this master was that he was very able to memorize. In Tibet, this was great. This was very strong. Masters were excellent memorizers. So not to waste time, he had a room where he was writing during the day and memorizing during the night. This was a room where he had 2 copies of each book. So he would open 50 pages on the ground, all spread on the ground, and during his dream he would leave his body, memorize these 100 pages, and then wake up in the morning with these pages memorized. So it's said by the masters after him that that gift of paper, ink and pen was, after all, a secret interferences, because it was of more benefit for him if he continued to meditate, as he was ready to take that important step of meditating further to achieve the highest state, inner state. So this is called a secret interference. There is a famous saying in Tibetan: you don't know something, ask Puten. You don't know something, ask Puten Tanche Khyentse, because he wrote something about everything. Have you got any doubts, any uncertainty about something? Ask Lama Tsongkhapa. He wrote 18 volumes, but his books have this benefit of bringing clarity, because he explains something in his books, and then maybe the explanation is just 1 page, but then he gives all the textual references to sutras and so on, then creates hypothetical doubts. Someone would have this kind of doubt and ask me this, so the answer is this and that. Then the non-hypothetical doubts of people of different epochs. So the explanation is half page, but to justify that, he goes on for another 15 to 20 pages. By reading his books, I have so much trust in you, Lama Tsongkhapa, that I just jump to the teaching, to the explanation. We are not at the point of having to face a secret interference like the one I just described. We are in a much earlier phase where the majority of us need to learn how to see interferences as interferences instead of seeing them as something to be followed. Remember, an interference isn't necessarily something negative. It's something that does not allow me to reach something far more important. If my objective is to get from point A to B, and while walking I come across something else, I remember about my objective and I see the interference as an interference, I will not follow it and I will overcome it to continue to my final destination, to point B. So another example. Our objective is to have a good relationship with that person. We all have these kind of objectives with our mother, father, son, daughter, colleagues. To have a good relationship. Sometimes I already have a good relationship, or I do want to develop it. There are interferences in both cases. If I still don't have a good relationship and I'm building it, many things will happen, external, internal, and secret. When I'm unable to see the interference as such, I will follow it, I will give importance to it, and it will not allow me to go forward. If I instead see the interference as such, it will be something that will need to be eliminated. I want to have a good relationship with you, or I already have a good relationship with you. We come across a certain tension, negative words or unpleasant reaction, different points of view, or any other situations. These are interferences to keeping the relationship pure or developing it. So, what is more important to me, that tension or having a good relationship? What is more important? If to me it is more important to have a healthy relationship with that person, these kind of things will be just difficulties on the path. I'll have to see them, face them, but I won't allow myself to waste my attention and energy on them. My energy will flow towards continuing. Another example, I'm walking and I stumble upon something. I will try to jump over it, to continue to go forward. Then if my foot is aching, I will take care of it, but I have continued. Same way in the relationship with the other person. Sometimes we need time, we need space, but the inner attitude is much different when we recognize that specific fact as an interference to be overcome, rather than letting it take the whole space within myself and becoming the real purpose rather than achieving a certain result. So, when we recognize the interference as such, we will give it less importance. We'll understand it just needs to be eliminated because we need to keep our direction. Sometimes interferences, inner and outer ones, are also generic. Something we were talking about before. Certain tensions which we can't explain. And here it is important to recognize interferences as such. What I mean is, there is a tension. I don't know where it comes from, what it is, but I won't follow it. I won't react upon it. Sometimes I see some tension in the air. I feel something. Some days, some moments aren't, or some places aren't so pleasant. The key to me is not to react to life in general through that kind of tension, and do not enter the dynamic of understanding why is this happening, seeing everything from ourselves. Some days ago there was some tension and someone said, it's so difficult, look our situation. And I said, please, look up, look around you in the world, what is going on right now. What you see in front of you is nothing compared to what's going on around us. When there are certain dynamics on a collective level, each of us react in a certain way. And in order to understand what happens in the micro world, is to see, to observe what happens on the macro level, and vice versa. So when we feel certain tensions, and we notice that on a collective level something similar is happening, we will tend to react in the same way. So it is important not to enter those kind of dynamics. Another example. Two people, it happened in the past, a couple, just married couple, went on holiday with the rest of the family. A large family. When they arrive, they start to argue. There's some tension rising. And the lady says to the husband, wait a minute. When we experience this kind of tensions, they will try the way of stemming off. So let's try for once not to be us. If you want, we can argue between the two of us later on. So now please, let's not argue, and let's observe where this tension steams off. I think on my brother. Let's wait a minute and observe. So they didn't enter that dynamic, and some hours later, that specific brother exploded with his wife. So sometimes tensions try a way to steam off, to exit, and the weaker ring of the chain is usually the one blowing off. And that means that every unresolved aspect of ourselves, wounds, emotions, will be the weak ring of the chain. But when we are able to recognize that something is that is a tension, is not due to ourselves, but is a external influence, in that case we can choose whether we want to project within ourselves that specific tension or not. I find very useful to be able to see tension without paying attention to the nature of it, trying to find a way to discharge it. We see the tension, but we go forward in our direction. We want to feel good with ourselves, we want to meditate. We have different objectives which we set. We feel the tension, but we do not allow ourselves for this tension to represent an obstacle towards my direction. Otherwise, we're just carried away by interferences, which can be of every kind of type: astrological, social, related to our family. There are various types of interferences. And if I'm carried away by the interference, I will live through it. And at the end, I will react, creating more tensions, more difficult situations, so that when the original tension is gone, I'll have to face even more, entering a never-ending cycle. So, to sum up, we need to understand that we are based on up and downs. We'll feel joy, sadness. We're never the same. When we don't feel good, it's good. It's okay. Don't have the expectation to always feel joy, to feel euphoric. There are moments where we need to be more introspective, more reflective. It is normal. We are not flat. We are following a curve, a wave, trying to make sure that the wave is more balanced rather than having spikes in it. When we feel something, let's try not to give it a reason straight away and point our fingers towards a certain cause or without labeling it. Sometimes we don't have clarity about what we feel, so let's give ourselves more time to develop more clarity, or on that thing, to face it or to let it go. When we feel that specific thing is coming from a certain wound in the past, then we have to face it. If I react immediately, finding the scapegoat, the guilty feeling, the demon is east and I throw the torma west. This is a Tibetan proverb which means that I usually react in the opposite way. Often, when we have an inner negative feeling, anger, sadness, and so on, it is related to our inner wounds, past traumas, unresolved things, so that the situations where living at the moment is just a condition for them to ripen, to manifest. So if I project the condition as the cause, I lose sight on the real reason why I'm feeling that. So when I feel something, I welcome it, I observe it, I step back before reacting towards what's going on around me. This will help enormously. Then I feel tension. I don't know what's the cause of it, but notice that when there's a difference between attention coming from ourselves and a difference and something coming from the outer world. At least this is my perception. Something coming from inside and something coming from outside. But we equally feel it. So also in this case, we do not react. We recognize the interference and we generate an opposite force, maybe a mantra, prayer, positive action, just to oppose what is going on without entering that attitude of finding the guilty person, and so on. This is recognizing the interferences as interferences and helps us to keep our way, our path, our direction. And it's also important to have objectives, even simple ones. I want to have a good relationship with everyone. This is a large objective made of little, more specific objectives. Each person is a smaller objective, but they all lead to a larger one. The clearer our objectives are, the clearer interferences appear as interferences. Yeah? So we will do our dedications. One last thing. If outer interferences are strong, there's tension, arguments, and so on, the more the outer situation goes towards darkness, the more important is for us internally to go towards light. We are living a global situation, moment, just to mention one. The attitude of competition is growing over cooperation. So certain values are getting lost. So it is important for us to put energy in what we believe in. The darker it gets, the more energy we need to put towards light. And that means not following the interferences.
Losan tempe drume sasumgi druwe Michel taktu ne gyurchi kewa kuntu yanda lama dan drame chuki pela longchechin sadan lamge yunte rabzone dorje changi kopa nyurutoba sho nimo dele tsendele nime kuyan delekshin ninsen taktu delekpe Jingelo kuncho sumki ngodrubutsol kuncho sumki trashishon.
At dawn or dusk, at night or during the day, may the three jewels give their blessings. May they help us to obtain all realizations and sprinkle the path of our life with various signs, various auspicious signs.
May they help us to achieve all realizations and sprinkle all the path of our lives with various signs of auspiciousness. Buona giornata a tutti.
Wishing you a very good day. Today I won't be able to receive you as I'm in retreat. By the end of the month I need to finish this book Even before this teaching, I spent an hour writing my book, so now I need to go back to it. As yesterday I was planning based on the days to get to the end of the month, so I need to put a lot of energy into something which I don't really like, to leave the room at the end of the teachings without receiving you, but I'm sorry, I need to go. Have a good day.